You see a lot of left campaigns that are shambolic, that implode, that eat themselves alive. This was what the opposite of the stereotype of the socialist, idealistic lefty campaign that is all about making a point but not winning. This campaign was about winning. It's not easy to hold him accountable, but there's going to be a lot of scrutiny. Left organizations like DSA are going to certainly try to back channel to him and ensure he is staying true to his vision, and also even publicly, perhaps publicly protest. I mean, we'll see. That is the push and pull. There's never been a mayor like this before, coming out of DSA, coming out of real left wing movement. I think the big thing you do is have an NYPD that respects people's right to protest, makes activists feel safe in the city. And if there are heavy handed tactics coming from Tish, she's either got to go or the left really has to come for him. I mean, one of those two things will have to happen.
Before we get to anything, the topic of the day, which is Zohran fever, Zohran derangement, depending upon how you want to see it. You have a lot going on for yourself as well, so let's not sell you short by making it all about Zohran. What do you have going on? In fact, like you have something going on in relation to Zohran Mamdani's campaign and rise as well. So how about catch me up on what's been up with you?
Well, I published a novel this year, Glass Century, and an essay collection from Verso, Fascism or Genocide, which is a collection of essays on the 2024 election, and also Zionism and Palestine, and some other topics, culture. And I have a novel coming out next year called Colossus, which I'm very excited about. And now I just signed a deal to write a book about Zohran Mamdani. So I'm going to be working on that beginning now. And the plan is to have it come out late next year, which is fast for a nonfiction book. So that's going to be a project that I'm looking forward to, but will be a lot of work.
That's like right in time for his presidential campaign, you think?
Can't do it, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your view. But no, he can't run. He can't run for president. So
Right. Yeah. I actually I was thinking about it, and I don't know how serious that is. That is like completely a deterrent, huh? Like he can't run for
yeah,
president at all
in the
because he wasn't born here.
Constitution, it's a president or vice president must be born in the United States. There are some, like Ted Cruz, I believe, is technically born in Canada, but two American citizens, and he was momentarily abroad. He wasn't living there, so I think he was okay. But yeah, you have to be of a in the United States at the time of your birth.
Wow, that's actually pretty incredible. I mean, I wasn't. There's also another person that I think I've thought about, which is Rashida Tlaib, who's also another person that think. I think Ilhan Omar also gets ruled out for the same reason or something like that,
Mm.
right? Like
Arnold
they can't run for.
Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger can't run for president either.
No, yeah, I can't imagine the energy and momentum that a Schwarzenegger run would bring about at this moment. Writing fiction versus writing nonfiction. I guess like we have to come all the way back to which do you like more? Like where do you find yourself to be more in your element? Do you feel like and also like where do you feel like you are contributing the most to the discourse and meaningfully to the discourse and to what's going on around you?
I prefer fiction, and I derive more fulfillment for it. I care about it more. Nonfiction's easier. I'll say of the two to write. I can write nonfiction very quickly. I can write fiction fairly quickly, but it's a much more considered and concerted effort. And for obvious reasons, you really are sweating over the prose. I do in my nonfiction prose. I want my pieces to be well written. I want them to, in some ways, be lyrical, and be resonant. But it's easier to produce nonfiction because ultimately you have to be understood, and that to an extent means simplifying things. So, and in terms of meaning, I mean, I think I contribute meaningfully to the discourse and nonfiction. Certainly, I'm proud of that. I think my fiction is getting more appreciated now, so that is contributing at the same time. Fiction exists on a longer tail. It's the sort of thing you can read someone's book 10 years from now, and then it can be meaningful to them. Nonfiction, it varies, honestly. I mean, a lot of essays and columns I do, I think can stand the test of time, and some are very tied into their moment. That's just the nature of the job. They're relevant to that time and less so later on. So, my heart's always with fiction. I believe it's one of the very highest art forms. Nonfiction, like writing this nonfiction book on a short timeline won't be as big a challenge for me because I find the prose comes pretty easily, and the process is fairly straightforward.
You actually have like a pretty sizable readership, right? Like for your Substack, you write independently.
Mm.
I know you from back when you were like a city hall reporter who was like reporting on Bill de Blasio, uh, day-to-day affairs. You had a much deeper relationship with Zoran going all the way back to your campaign running for office. So how about like set us up with how you started running from being a city hall reporter covering the daily beat to deciding that okay, I'm going to run for office, and how did you come to meet Zoran?
So it was certainly is a pivot, as they say. So it was 2017. I was a young reporter, columnist as well. I was beginning to write columns for the Village Voice, actually, doing a lot of um, you sort of spicy and punchy columns and little essays on city and state politics. And that was the proto Substack. The Substack didn't exist then or hardly existed. I wouldn't join for several years. That was really the first time I was finding my voice as, I would say, columnist in a real way. It was that year. And, I found myself being, more and more interested in the political process and wondering what it would be like to run for office, and feeling also very earnest about progressive policy and wanting to make a difference. And I lived, as I still do, in southern Brooklyn. And then the area was represented by a Republican, a pro-Trump Republican in a gerrymandered seat. I knew the 2018 midterm would be very good for the Democrats and that he was vulnerable. And so I set out to run. I ended up in a primary against an establishment backed Democrat who figured the same thing. That Democrat defeated me and ended up winning, and he's still the state senator. But he's a footnote to the story. The most interesting part of the story to the historical record now is that when I was just getting my campaign going. I was just a few months in. I was looking to hire staff, and I wanted to know, who are bright young people, and I was young myself, who can join this enterprise. I asked the campaign manager for a city council campaign that had run in 2017 in my neighborhood, that had been backed by DSA. It's one of the very early DSA campaigns, and it was a campaign that didn't win, but it had done well, had been the runner up, and I was impressed by the energy behind it. I was impressed by the number of volunteers and the organization, and it seemed like something I wanted to draw upon. So I asked who from this campaign should I hire? The campaign manager, who now incidentally is the going to be the next city councilwoman for my area. Um, she gave me two names on the campaign, and one of those two names was Zohran Mamdani, who is then the third ranked member of that city council campaign, not even the second. He didn't run it. He wasn't even the number two. He was number three. And he had been sort of organizing the fields program, the canvassers. That'd been his job on this other campaign. And I met him. I was very impressed by him. I got along with him. He was weighing another job offer at the time, so I wasn't sure if I'd get him. It was down to me and the Working Families Party. And he decided after a month or so, I think he wanted to see if I was raising money and being serious, and I wasn't a vanity campaign, wasting his time. He decided to join on. And so it began. And he was initially hired as the field director, and he became the campaign manager, and we spent a lot of time together. We spent, hundreds of hours between door knocking, between visiting mosques, between standing in subway stations, between going to senior centers and everything else. It was a full effort campaign from the time the sun rose to the time the sun set and beyond. We were doing 14, 15-hour days together. And I say he's not so different then than now. I think people are always surprised when I say that. Well, the question is like, how has he evolved? And the answer is personally, he has not. In that he was a fully formed product at that age. I mean, he really was. He was an excellent public speaker, very charismatic, very good with people. I mean, the thing is, he was very good at motivating and organizing people. So,
Hmm.
back then, I knew he'd run for office someday, and we'd even muse about it. I knew he was interested. You don't know someone's going to end up mayor of New York City and be world famous. One can't predict that, but certainly a political career was in his future. That was clear.
You also couldn't predict that like he was gonna beat you at table tennis, apparently.
Beat me at
From
table
what
tennis.
you.
Yes, yes, I wrote about how after the campaign we went down to Brighton Beach, hanging out. A few of us went. Kind of a rare time because I mean we would Zara and I would like sort of would socialize in the sense that we saw each other a lot and talked a lot and made a lot of jokes, but it was always in a campaign context. That's what we were doing. So this was like a rare post-campaign time where there wasn't much going on anymore, which was good, and we were tired, so we could actually hang out. So we went and did that and played table tennis down on Brighton Beach. I'm a decent table tennis player. I grew up playing regular tennis, so I have a skill set there. And he was good and he beat me, and I was surprised by that. I thought I'd beat him, but he's quite good.
I mean, he did have that fiasco with the bench press, so you don't have to bench press a whole lot to be able to play
No,
table
I
tennis
think I
well,
could
I
out.
believe.
I don't bench either. I think I could out bench him, but I also think benching is overrated. I think it's the sort of thing people who are bad at sports like try to get good at because it's like easier anyone can get good at benching. You just kind of just do it a lot and build up muscle. But getting good at an actual sport, getting good at soccer or something or baseball, it takes many years of practice and effort. So I defended him in that front when Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams were making fun of him. Like, well, what sports do you guys play? What can you actually do?
And what did they actually do as mayors also, right? Like, and
I
that
mean,
speaks to
well,
why Zoran
Adams.
was, yeah, Zoran's was far the better candidate than Cuomo in general, because Cuomo didn't even run a campaign. He just basically kept bad-mouthing Zoran the whole time. And
Yeah.
Eric Adams didn't run a campaign at all. I don't know what he was doing. These two were like effectively asleep at the wheel, and I feel like just like once he won the primary, it was just like a road to the finish line for the Mamdani campaign. But even before that, like deciding to run for him, do you have any insight into what got him to run? Why this was such an opportune moment?
Hmm.
And like like several people, I remember, Jomani Williams was someone who was floated for a while. I believe there was even talk of Letitia James running for
Yes, there
mayor
was.
at
There
one
was.
point.
Yeah.
And like in New York politics, there's like it's not dynastic per se, but like there's like this sense of biding your time, and even among progressives,
Yeah.
like you should go first, etc. It's not like a seniority thing, but who has
Yes.
a better shot at winning? So how did like Zoran become the guy who everybody backs? Because this level of unification has never quite happened. Like there have been many runs before, but there was a level of unification behind Mamdani that was unprecedented. And why did
Well,
you think that was?
what's interesting, I mean, you're right that typically with mayoral elections, it is very turn-based. It is, I ascend to this office, I climb this ladder, now my opportunity arrives, and then I run. It's like this sort of meticulous step-by-step thing. And Zoran skipped that entirely. He was a state assemblyman and shot straight up, which hasn't happened ever. I don't think a state assembly member, as far as I know, at least in the modern history of New York City, in the last 80, 90 years, um, if not much longer, has ever become mayor. A state senator, I think the last time was a state senator, Jimmy Walker, in the 1920s. He was a Tammany Hall politician. A few things. I mean, one to your question, he was thinking about it for a few years. I can say that, like musing on it, mulling it. Of course, I think the conversation then was more along the lines of how does a viable left wing campaign look in New York City? How does a socialist campaign look? Um, how do we win, but also how do we be competitive? I mean, that was a big question. In terms of unification, I would say unification only happened because he was doing so well. He
Hmm.
started out at 0% in the polls, in essence at zero, with the only endorsement being DSA itself, which came behind him early. But even the DSA elected officials were some were slower than others to back him. Actually, I remember getting ready to write a Substack about how the DSA politicians are dragging their feet with Zohran, and Zohran himself told me to hold off on it because he's working on it. He's getting it. It's going to happen. And this was like in the spring. It's crazy. I'm trying to think. This was probably, gosh, I have to could check my messages. This was like around March or something, in February, March. So I mean, he announced his campaign in October, and still like the whole DSA contingent, like DSA itself was on board. The organization supported him, but like the actual politicians, it was like hit and miss. Like a few did, a few were neutral, a few were looking at Brad Lander. I think AOC very notoriously was waiting and waiting and waiting. So, he only got any type of unification because he was so clearly destined to do something great, whether he was going to push Cuomo, to the point where Cuomo would have a very narrow, most Pyrrhic primary victory, which is what I think a lot of people thought would happen, or
Hmm.
he'd outright win. So that's when unification happened. But yes, certainly Jumaane Williams has been floated for years, being the public advocate. I think he missed his window. I think 2021 mayoral race, he probably could have won. In the Eric Adams, Catherine Garcia, Scott Stringer race, where there really was not Andrew Yang, there was not a strong candidate. I mean, Adams barely won that race. Had Jumaane ran then, when Black Lives Matter was still very potent, I think he had a real shot to win. But he's been a sort of, I would argue, I'm trying the best word. He's not made his mark all that much as a public advocate. It's a tough job to make your mark in. Doesn't have much power, but I would say he's not really resonated a great deal with the city. Tish James would have been very strong, actually. Tish James, once Cuomo was rumored to be running and then definitely running, and probably like the winter time to early spring, there was talk of Tish getting in. Tish would have been really complicated the path for Zoran. I do think she would have made it tough for him, given his campaign was just getting off the ground. You could have seen progressive anti-Cuomo support moving into Tish James. Now she's not as exciting as Zoran, but I think had she run, she would have been potent as well. But then she chooses not to run. Jumaane had been hovering only if Eric Adams resigned, he'd be acting mayor and there'd be a special election. But Jumaane was completely unwilling to run in a primary against Eric Adams. So
Hmm.
the lane had opened for Zoran. I mean, all elections are a mixture of, luck and timing. And Zoran is uniquely talented. We all know that. He is a once in a generation political force in the way Obama was. But like Obama too, you need your opportunities. Obama needed the opportunity to become a United States senator when he was still in his 40s, and then he needed to have the 2008 as his moment, coming off 8 years of George W. Bush. Right, the stars had to align. So I think similarly for Zoran, the stars aligned. You had a lack of strong, progressive candidates in the race. Brad Lander could not get momentum. You had a deeply flawed incumbent in Andrew Cuomo. I mean, people ask me, did Zoran win because he's so great or because Cuomo is so lousy? And the answer is both. I mean, the
Hmm.
answer is each of these are true. Cuomo, as you said, Cuomo in the primary hardly campaigned at all. He campaigned more in the general election, but even then, he had no affirmative vision for the future of New York City. It was a completely anti-Zoran campaign in the general. That got him to 40%. I mean, he got a lot of Republicans that way, but he had no path to 50. And he's still whining about how if Curtis Lewa didn't run, but Curtis Lewa is the Republican nominee. I mean, in what universe is there no Republican nominee? Also, in what universe are you getting every last Republican to vote for you? As many as you got, You still didn't get 50% with that vote. Zoran cleared 50%, so he wins anyway.
Yeah, and
But
like, why is he going after Republicans to begin with, right? Like, he's
right. I mean,
supposed to be the
that's not right. I
Democratic.
mean, that's not like you're a Democrat. That's not how you win mayoral races by cannibalizing the Republican vote and hoping for the best. But that was his strategy. That was his only strategy. It was to spend, through his super PACs, tens of millions of dollars against him and scare people. And it. I'll say it came closer to working than I probably thought it would. I didn't think Cuomo would be that successful eating Republican votes like was. But again, you also need Democratic votes, and that was Cuomo's problem. He bled out Democratic support, particularly in the Black community, where he had a lot of it in the primary. That was erased largely in the general.
I can think of key moments in hindsight, and these are kind of tracking as like really important moments, like the debate performance where he says like, "Why are we even talking about a different country? I am focused on New
Yes.
York City." Very clear cut message discipline right there. And also like even way before that, him speaking to Trump voters is always brought up.
Yeah.
The fact that he had this meeting in the Oval Office, which is like very polarizing meeting with Trump itself, suggests like they even talked about it that you took a whole bunch of my voters. It looks like so there seems to have been like he spoke to the right people. He was there at I remember the kind of press conference that he did outside when Tom Homan was speaking at City Hall,
Yes.
and saying that like this was during Mahmoud Khalil's detention, while Mahmoud Khalil was still detained and people didn't know what was going on with him. This happened, and Zoran spoke at the press conference. I remember that was also a pretty pivotal moment. So there were like these salient moments. In talking about that, can you also like give a peek behind the curtain in terms of who's making these decisions? Because I see that Zoran's also like an AD. He used to be an assistant director and like he ran your
Yes.
campaign. He used to be an assistant director on his mom's movie.
Yeah.
And it seems like he has a pretty good sense of how to do media.
To answer your
Yeah.
question, it's him. So as I start reporting on this book, I've been getting more behind the scenes. I mean, truthfully, in the primary, my behind the scenes was just my conversations with him, and we would talk a lot in the early stages of the primary, but it wasn't so much about like the social media and things like that. We would just talk about what the state of play was in the race. Honestly, I remember we were having a lot of conversations about what happens if Eric Adams resigns. And kind of the importance of fundraising and things like that. But in terms of like what you brought up, what I'm finding is most of these were him. That
Hmm.
yes, because of his instincts, he's been on so many campaigns, not just my own. His mother is a globally renowned film director. He did grow up in privilege, and he's very smart. So a lot of these choices were his. Like I believe the Trump voter, the idea to go talk to Trump voters was him. Homan, obviously, I mean, he was there at the state capitol. He was shouting. That was him. The Israel answer, I believe, was him too. I mean, it's something I have to find out more, honestly, as I report this. Like, was it him or was it, he had some close advisors who were helping out for sure. He had a good team around him. But this team is nothing without the candidate.
Hmm.
The candidate made the team as much as the team made the candidate. I think what you can say about the team is they're all bright people and they're all competent people and they're all very organized people. I think that's important for the left. You see a lot of left campaigns that are shambolic, that implode, that eat themselves alive. This was not that campaign. This was a well-run machine. This was what the opposite of the stereotype of the socialist, idealistic lefty campaign that is all about making a point but not winning. This campaign was about winning. Um, but a lot of it was Zoran. I mean, a lot of the big decisions were him.
The reason why DSA campaigns are majorly different from all of the other, even seemingly progressive posturing runs is that like they're entirely powered by a grassroots movement. It's just like thousands and thousands of volunteers knocking on doors for you.
Yes.
There's no science behind it besides that, and that's
No,
always like
no.
been beautiful for me because I have like, it's very clear, it's very clarifying. It seems like you're telling the electorate, hey, you want a good leader for you, go get to work. It seems like a very straightforward sort of engagement
Yeah.
with the electorate as volunteers. But with that said, how much of a difference does it make for a candidate to lead from the top like this? Because now, how do we hold him accountable if he's the guy? Who is he accountable to? What sort of structures will he have in place where his decision making can be like, in any sort of way? You don't want to control his decision making, but yeah, accountability. Like, who is he going to be accountable to? How do you hold him
Like
accountable?
I think there's going to be or first of all, New York has a lot of interest groups, but I would say DSA has a real open door into his administration. As chief of staff Elvis Scar Church is a member of DSA. She's very close with the organization. He has a DSA liaison. I mean, obviously holding accountable the mayor of New York City is not easy, but it's going to be incumbent on DSA and for other interest groups, for the New York Civil Liberties Union, for example, for his appointment of Jessica Tisch, who's a conservative police commissioner. Zohran argues she will take direction from him, so we'll find out if that's true. It's not easy to hold him accountable, but there's going to be a lot of scrutiny, and I do think that left organizations like DSA are going to certainly try to back channel to him and ensure he is staying true to his vision, and also even perhaps publicly protest. I mean, we'll see, right? It's early on. That is the push and pull. There's never been a mayor like this before, coming out of DSA, coming out of real left wing movement. So that's going to be interesting too, how they each navigate it.
This is what is like always driven me crazy about US politics. It's that like they call everybody communist. Like and I know that this guy he is Mahmoud Mamdani's son, and who's a scholar, who's a radical scholar, and he himself is like has openly stated a lot of like radical positions and stuff like that. But he has also like openly stated that he's a social democrat. He's just governs from the standpoint of creating a larger safety net, and his policies are the rent freeze, which Bill de Blasio implemented 3 times. He's proposing free buses, where I believe Bill de Blasio has proposed something like a free subway at one point in time.
Bloomberg proposed a free bus program for his
Right.
third term. Didn't
There you go.
happen, but yeah.
And like the third thing is childcare, which is and even democracy now. I remember Amy Goodman compared that to the Bill de Blasio's pre-K plan,
Yes.
where
It's an
like these
expansion
were
of that. It's a large expansion of that.
right. So it's kind of like these are all not things that I mean, first of all, these are not socialist policies per se. So and maybe you could argue that the grocery stores, the government-run grocery stores, could come to that definition. So, in what way, first of all, even when there's so much pushback to implementing like just this middle of the road, progressive policies, and in what way is a socialist agenda plausible, and how prepared do you think is the Mamdani campaign for it?
I think the agenda he ran on is plausible. I think a lot of what he campaigned on can happen. It might take a number of years. Some of it's like more expensive than others. I mean, that's the truth. A lot of it needs state help. And I believe he does have a strategy for dealing with Albany. And he's been working closely with the governor of late. So, whether it's a socialist agenda, a social democratic agenda, I think what he ran on is achievable. There are other challenges in the city, and there's no doubt about it. Even if you achieve your agenda, it's still going to be hard to run the city. But I'm cautiously optimistic, whether it's universal childcare, a version of it, a free bus program, at least the pilot program at the beginning, a rent freeze at some point, even if Adam stacks the appointments for the first year. The grocery stores. These can happen. He can do it. It's not far fetched, and it will make a difference in people's lives. It will make their lives more tolerable. Will it radically change New York City? No, and I think there are bigger challenges ahead. I would like to see more on the housing front. Maybe some form of city state finance social housing, getting creative in that way. We'll see. The NYPD is very tough. He has this proposal for the Department of Community Safety. It's a nice idea. Well, I think it can happen. Of course, there are going to be other challenges with the NYPD and how he manages those. Will be an open question, and how he navigates Tish. It's not a bad time to govern New York City. It's also a tough time because of Donald Trump. Even though they were chummy, Trump is unpredictable and could send troops here, could send a lot more ICE agents. It's all very very possible. So he will have to deal with that in particular.
We've spoken about the nuts and bolts of the Zoran campaign, but there's also the bigger beast of the phenomenon, which is much larger than the campaign. I think like, even somebody like Zoran should be having a hard time managing the celebrity that he has. Like it's almost like a way bigger, it's like almost like you're like a Power Ranger inside the big robot or something like that. So now Zoran's like not just Zoran, he's Zoran man, So he's capable. He's at once like extremely capable and extremely limited at the same time. For example, with the whole Trump meeting, and the fact that he endorsing or not endorsing Hakeem Jeffries. Is he going to keep this Jessica Tish, who's a dynastic, police commissioner who has also been, tied to a lot of the crushing of the protests, and so on. So is this like these are some things that different levels of power that he might or might not have, and like these are all different expectations, and every single action of his is obviously going to be scrutinized. But on what level is the scrutiny reasonable, and on what level is the scrutiny, do you think, going into levels of sensationalism that he's not even trying to be?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's reasonable scrutiny. You can question Jessica Tish being appointed. I mean, even I did. You can question his decision making around Hakeem Jeffries. I argued it was reasonable to not support Chi Osei as a primary challenger, but you could argue that Zoran either should have been neutral or supported Chi Osei. You could argue he's being too deferential to Hakeem Jeffries right now as a overall. To me, scrutiny is fair. No one should be above it. Of course, if he's a national and international figure now, so everything he does will be watched to absurd ends, to the point where if you really just watch the Trump meeting, Zoran remains very disciplined and says very little. It's Trump heaping praise upon him. Zoran does not praise Trump. He's not. There's idea, they were chummy. It's like to an yes, but Zoran himself was not buddying up with Trump
Mm-hmm.
either. So, people can take from that meeting what they want to take. I would say, reserve judgment in general for the government. That's where a lot of these questions will start to be answered. Is he staying true to his movement? Is he staying true to his policies? Is Jessica Tish acting as Zoran Mamdani's police commissioner, or is she acting as Jessica Tish? Right? That relationship might not be sustainable. We will find out soon.
Is this what he's like actually counting on, that time will, as you let things play out, they'll kind of fall apart on their own, like Jessica Tish? And the other thing, that recent development that happened, is the appointment of the speaker. A whole bunch of city council people seem to have conspired and appointed somebody or elected somebody who is promising to now be a thorn in the side, who's going to like be a check on Zoran implementing
Mhm.
his agenda, would be essentially an opponent. Is this like, and there were like, I saw like critiques that he had been asleep at the wheel, not pushing back against this eventuality or possibility, instead of like weighing in on a lot of national matters, like the Hakeem Jeffries thing, stopping Chiose from, or like DSA from endorsing, or trying to stop DSA from endorsing Chiose. So these are again like coming back to the question of, are we over scrutinizing? He is the 34-year-old dude who is getting into this job, which with large shoes to fill, and so on. On one hand, cutting him some slack as a person. On the other hand, cutting him some slack as a former organizer, a person who actually believes in the politics that he stands for. And the third, do we cut him some slack here at all? Because, like, the whole point of having a mayor like him is to constantly have a person you can do this to, that you can constantly keep pushing him, and he won't like snap and say, no more good stuff for you.
Yeah, I mean, the left is certainly privileged to have a mayor like this. I mean, you can't lose sight of that. There's no doubt. As I said before, I think the scrutiny is fair. You know, the speaker's race is a funny situation where some mayors have been very involved. Bill de Blasio helped elect a speaker when he became mayor. Others like Michael Bloomberg stayed out of the speaker fights completely. Zoran took the Bloomberg approach, really just allowed the body to select a speaker, and they selected one who's going to be more dispositionally against than for him. Now, I think they can work together. She's not a right winger. She's a center left Democrat now from the Upper East Side, which is it was anti Zoran territory, and she's certainly a Zionist, and he is not. I think they can work together. I think there's a big progressive bloc on the council. It's going to put pressure on this new speaker, Julie Menon. At the same time, there's also an argument he should have been involved in the speaker's race. I do think the time to, though the truth with the speaker's race is the time to get involved was many months ago. It's a little different than Chiose
Mm.
Hakeem, where that was a recent thing. In truth, if he wanted to influence the outcome of the speaker's race, he should have been in the muck from July onward. Once he became the Democratic nominee and he was most likely to win, that would be the time. Now, you can involve yourself, it can blow up in your face. That happened to Eric Adams, where he supported a candidate. That candidate support collapsed, and an anti Eric Adams speaker was elected. And Adams's relationship with the council was quite poor, and they overrode several of his vetoes. I'm assuming Zoran took the low risk approach of just backing no one, let it get sorted out, you deal with the winner. And I think that's the approach he took. It's a reasonable approach. I think you could say it might have been also advantageous to use his clout a bit and try to get someone else, but he didn't try. He let the council handle it. Now he'll deal with the winner. I think that's really what he wants to do now.
When a candidate gets elected, whether it's BLM, or now it's like the genocide protests, when a candidate gets elected as a sort of beacon of hope, off of the energy and the momentum, off of those actual really felt grassroots phenomena that are happening. It becomes automatically an expectation that is, I mean, like he has also explicitly voiced some views and so on, but this limited scope that he has as a New York City mayor. So first of all, what scope does he have as a New York City mayor to actually cater to the interests and the demands of the people who are opposed to genocide? And besides, like rhetorically, bringing like saying genocide in the Oval Office type stuff. Yes, I get that, like he's able to do that, but besides that, in concrete terms, what can he do? Second of all, how fair is it to look at the New York City mayor as the sort of rallying figure, a figure around whom you rally around for this cause, let alone anything national, given again the limited scope of what he can do?
I think one concrete thing you can do beyond the rhetoric, which matters, is protect the right to protest, as you said, and other pro-Palestine activists have said as well. Jessica Tisch and this Eric Adams NYPD have been quite oppressive, and certainly past administrations have as well, going back to Bloomberg, when it comes to the handling of protesters. So I think protecting free speech, making a pro-Palestine activist feel comfortable in their own city to non-violently protest. If you're violently protesting, yes, the police have to get involved. You do not have a right to riot, to burn things down. The pro-Palestine protesters have never done this. I think people often conflate them with the 2020 BLM protesters, where during George Floyd you had real rioting, and the left couldn't acknowledge that, but it did happen. The pro-Palestine movement, it's a very peaceful movement. I'm always, I defend it on the grounds of I agree with a lot of it, but also putting aside my own viewpoints. From a speech standpoint, they're always within the bounds of protected speech and action. I mean, they don't attack people physically. Their slogans are not anti-Semitic in the sense that they're saying death to Jews. They are saying from the river to the sea and free Palestine. and globalize the Intifada, which again, a lot of Orthodox Jews think are all anti-Semitic, but the truth is they're also slogans for the liberation of Palestinians. And I wouldn't use globalized intifada personally, in part because it does mean different things to different people. But what Zohran did try to say, and he got destroyed for it on the podcast, and I can say because I don't really give a shit, is that this slogan to the pro-Palestine movement means struggle for their liberation. Doesn't mean go out and kill Jews. Now, Jews can see it that way, and that's why I wouldn't use it. I'm Jewish, and I wouldn't use it just because you want to use slogans that at least can't be so easily conflated. But saying "Free Palestine," I mean, there are activists, there are pro-Israel forces who think "Free Palestine" is anti-Semitic, or "From the River to the Sea," which again is calling for a unified binational state, which is to me not anti-Semitic. Some would say it is. I don't see it that way. But I also see my Judaism is divorced from Israel, quite frankly. I'm an American Jew and I care about America and I care about Jews being safe here and I care about Jews being safe everywhere. But I'm not interested in upholding the policies of a country that I didn't have no citizenship in and didn't vote, don't support and never participated in any real way. But anyway, back to Zoran. I think the big thing you do is have an NYPD that respects people's right to protest. That is not instituting mass surveillance on Muslim people. Makes activists feel safe in the city. That's the big part of it. There's a lot he can't do. He can't fix the Middle East. No one can. It's not getting fixed. The Zionist and anti-Zionist, but both in some sense are wrong in that way, where the anti-Zionists are not going to live their dream of a binational state. Israel's going nowhere. And of course, the Zionists are defending something that is, I think, morally indefensible. So it's a quagmire that no one's resolving anytime soon. And the mayor of New York can't. So and I don't think people expect him to. I think they expect him to stay true to his values, to speak out when it requires him speaking out. And I think that tangibly just ensuring protesters and the movement largely can operate freely in the city. As long as they're not hurting people physically, they should be allowed to do what they do. That is what speech is in the United States. The ACLU once protected the right of the Ku Klux Klan to march. They are explicitly white supremacists, and pro-Palestine activists are nowhere in that zone at all. So as long as a pro-Palestine activist is not physically hurting someone, they should be allowed to protest. I think it's important for the Mamdani NYPD to ensure that. And if there are heavy-handed tactics coming from Tish, she's either got to go or the left really has to come for him. I mean, one of those two things will have to happen. So we'll see.